What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fight Dialogue. My name is Tim. This is Ask Me Anything 15. And I'm usually training on Sundays. I do a little bit of an MMA class on Sunday mornings. But everybody was a bunch of bums today, so they didn't want to do it. So I had some free time, and the card last night was fantastic. So I wanted to talk about that and some other stuff that happened this weekend. So, happy daylight savings time to my American brethren. I know that fucked me up to start off the day. I woke up the time that I usually wake up and realized that it was an hour earlier because I have like an old-fashioned alarm clock. I don't use my phone, and I forgot to reset the time. But anyway, welcome. I'm gonna recap what happened last night and give my initial reactions. And I want to get a dialogue going with you guys. It's not just going to be me going on and on about this because I really want to hear your thoughts on what happened. So the first fight on the main card. Well, first of all, let's talk about the prelims a little bit because there were two fights in particular that were just incredible and really a showcase of some of the upcoming talent that we're going to be seeing in the next few years inside the UFC. The first being Ian Garry. I forget the name of the guy that he fought, but Ian Garry, he's a very talented young Irish prospect coming out of the Cage Warriors promotion. He just won the belt over there, if I'm not mistaken. Really, really good. Really tall and lanky for his weight class. I'm not sure what that weight class is. I'm going to say around welterweight or lightweight maybe. If he's lightweight, he's an enormous lightweight. But yeah, he's tall, lanky. He's pretty much the Conor McGregor archetype, not just in terms of nationality, but in terms of style and attitude. And he definitely played that card heavily after he won the fight. And I kind of like to see it because I like there to be that Conor McGregor type character displayed prominently inside the sport. But at the same time, I don't know, he kind of went too hard with it. I don't mind paying homage to McGregor and what he's done and everything, but he seemed like a bit of a nut hugger. That's just my first impressions. But maybe he's doing that to kind of build his own brand because if he can get Conor McGregor behind him and he can get Conor McGregor tweeting about him and, maybe even eventually training with him, that's only going to boost his, not just skill, but his brand. So, it's not the dumbest thing he could be doing. If you just joined in the chat, guys, welcome. Talking about the UFC event from last night, just absolutely crazy. Talking about Ian Garry. And, it was interesting because in that first round, he took a lot of shots. He got hit pretty hard with some counters. And I think it broke his nose pretty early on in the fight. So maybe he does have some stuff to work on for sure. But that right-hand counter was beautiful. Really beautiful shot. Perfect showcase of some upcoming Irish talent. Francesco Genovese, what is up? Got Knut the Grape as well. All right. So I'm gonna let the chat fill up a little bit before I start to answer your question, guys. The other fight that was on the prelims that was just crazy was Alex Pereira, and he fought a Greek guy. I think his name is Michailidis. Michailidis, I think, had one fight in the UFC so far, and he came from the contender series, and he's pretty well-rounded. His striking's not terrible, and his grappling is actually quite good. And he went in there, he looked real shaky on the feet against Pereira. Like obviously he didn't want to be in there at that range, but every strike he threw was a little bit sloppy. And He eventually did get the clinch. He got the takedown at one point. And I remember going into the Pereira fight, like before it started, all I wanted, and I was talking to the guys on Discord about this, the only thing I wanted to see was Pereira grapple. We know the guy can strike. We know the guy can knock people out. But I want to know if he can grapple at an elite level, or against elite grapplers, I should say. He doesn't necessarily have to be an elite grappler himself, but he has to be able to defend against them. And Michailidis, you know, maybe he's not elite, but he's definitely well-rounded, and he's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So Michailidis got him to the ground, and Pereira was able to get back up. And that in and of itself is impressive. You know, I didn't see as much grappling as I would have hoped because I really wanted to just gauge how good of a grappler Pereira was right off the bat. But he got to his feet pretty quickly, and in the second round, he got that flying knee knockout. Like, what more could you ask for from a debut? It was beautifully executed. It was a very nice highlight. And I'd be interested to see who they give him next, if they're going to continue to give him guys that are strong grapplers, or maybe they will just throw him in there with some other strikers just to kind of build his brand, build his highlight reel even further. So yeah, those two names are very, very good to watch out for. And how about the what's his name? Barnett, the big black guy that knocked out John Vallante. I mean, I hate to rag on John Vallante, but the guy is well past his prime. He doesn't even want to make his natural weight anymore. He's content at being at heavyweight. And he really hasn't looked that good in his last couple outings. I mean, he can still fight, no doubt, but in the UFC, I don't understand how he's still fighting. Like, him and a couple other guys, like the one that comes to mind is Sam Alvey. Similar style too, similar situation where like they don't even try to make their natural weight anymore, and they just go in there and just try to box pretty much. And it's really annoying, and it's more annoying to see them continue to be given fights in the UFC when there's plenty of much more well-rounded, talented guys that are trying to claw their way into the UFC to no avail. So, yeah, so the knockout, Barnett, and the whole time they're on him about his Taekwondo background and the spinning shit that he does, which is impressive for a guy his size. But he lands this spinning heel kick, and the angle and the range that he landed it from was the thing that was most impressive to me, because they were just like, oh, he's a big fat guy and he's spinning. Wow. Like, yeah, that is impressive, but did you guys see like where he threw it from? He was basically right fucking next to Vallante. And not just that, but Vallante had a huge height advantage over Barnett. So he basically had to go full split as he's spinning, not just like a regular split, like a vertical split where his one foot's planted on the ground and the other foot's way the fuck up in the air above his own head. It was really impressive to see that kind of dexterity, timing, and precision from Barnett. And I'm glad he got that win, because his last fight against Rothwell was a little bit lackluster. I mean, you can imagine why, you know, Rothwell has way more experience against a much higher level of fighter. So I guess in that sense, he did better than expected. But yeah, it was good to see him get the win. All right, so we've got some questions filling up here. Guys, I was just talking about some of the prelims that were on the UFC 268 card, kind of going over Ian Gary and Pereira and all that, and then I'm going to talk about the main card stuff. Let's see what questions I got first, though. Francesco Genovese says, so pumped after this banger of an event. I recently got told I am going to fight December 4th, finally. So Francesco Genovese is a guy that hops on here a lot, and he's, I don't know if you're an amateur or a pro, but that's awesome, man. Definitely give me an update on what happens in the result of that. His question is, what do you think about the two Italian fighters on the Bellator 270 card? Honestly, I know Bellator has a bunch of Italian fighters. They have a pretty deep European talent pool, especially the British Isles. But I didn't watch the prelims of 270, and in fact, the only fights I watched from 270 were the three main events, I guess you could say, which were really good. But I didn't watch the rest of the card, so I can't really comment on the two Italian guys. But maybe I'll go back and watch them. I know they have the prelims on YouTube. The Brown Guys MMA, what's up? After Colby's loss to Usman, he should win a bunch of fights to get back into title contention. Who should he fight next? Masvidal is a good name, but what about Gilbert, Leon, or Chimaev? You know, we're going to talk a little bit about Chimaev, and I really like Chimaev against anybody at this point. He's definitely a huge name for the UFC right off the bat. He's going to be a needle mover and all that jazz. So I don't know if the UFC wants to throw him in against the toughest guys quite yet. But with that being said, when they announced the fight between him and Li Jingliang after coming off his COVID layoff, I was kind of worried for Chimaev because, like, I really thought it was going to be a more competitive fight. But obviously, Chimaev is just on another level. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they will throw him in there against a tough guy like Masvidal or Colby or one of those fighters that are really highly ranked. You got to remember that Chimaev he wasn't ranked at all going into that Li Jingliang fight. And Jingliang, you know, he wasn't as exactly at the gatekeeper status either. He was ranked number 11. I would love to see Chimaev versus Colby. I would love to see Colby versus Masvidal. All those fights make sense to me. Gilbert Burns is another one. But yeah, as competitive as the Usman and Colby fight was, both of them, you really have to earn your way back to the triple shot, the triple challenge, whatever you want to call it. And it's going to be a while until he does that. Jan Popovich, what's up? Love your content. Thank you, sir. What are my opinions on the co-main, particularly Weili's grappling approach? Also, hypothetical Justin Gaethje versus Poirier rematch thoughts. Guys, Jan, thank you for asking that question. I'm very glad you asked it because I'm going to be doing a little bit of I told you soing, because when I made that Li Jingliang grappling video, I was basically hinting that I think Weili should really utilize her grappling in this fight. I really thought it was going to make a difference. And then I put a post up after that saying, basically, like, if I was Weili's coach, I would be saying, catch the kicks, take her down, land some ground and pound, let her back up, because, you know, if you kind of stay on the ground, like stay on top of Rose constantly, you're going to be looking at submission threats now, and you don't want to have to deal with that, especially since I think Rose has the submission advantage because Weili's submission defense isn't like the best in the world. So I thought that should have been the strategy going in, and that's exactly what she did. I didn't expect her to take such a heavy leg kicking approach, although in hindsight that was really smart because of Rose's stance and clearly her inability to check them really. So Weili was really, really smart going into this fight, guys. Really, really intelligent game plan. And she landed those kicks and she landed those takedowns. And when she got on top of Rose, she landed. Unfortunately, the moments where she got on top of Rose were too brief. They were too close to the end of the round for the ones where she did establish control. And for the times that she didn't establish control properly, Rose did a great job of taking advantage of that, kicking away and getting back to her feet. So you got to give Rose credit there. Honestly, I scored the fight for Weili. I did. I scored the first 3 rounds for Weili, the last 2 for Namajunas. People were saying 10-8 for the last round. No fucking way in hell. I'm sorry. Yes, she had positional control the entire round, but she landed maybe 5 good shots in that entire 5 minutes of top control time. You know, the rest of the time, Wei Li was actually doing a lot of moving around, a lot of kicking away, and a lot of elbows and punches from off of her back. By no means am I saying that Wei Li won the round from off of her back, but to get a 10-8 round, you've got to smack people down. Like, you've got to almost win, like come within inches of winning. And that's not what happened in the 5th round. So yeah, I scored the first 3 for Wei Li, the last 2 for Rose, but the first 3 could have gone either way. Maybe the 3rd round, not so much. But the first 2 could have gone either way, if I'm remembering correctly. Don't quote me on that, though. Whereas the last 2, which I scored for Rose, were clearly in Rose's favor. And if that fight had a 6th round or a 7th round, I think it would have been a snowball effect. I think Rose was gaining momentum and Wei Li was losing steam. So I'm not super upset about the decision, but that's just what I'm saying. I scored the first 3 for Wei Li. She went in there with a fantastic game plan, if I do say so myself, and it really made the difference and made this fight way more competitive than I even thought it was going to be. Like, that was my call for Wei Li's strategy, to utilize that, but I didn't actually think she was going to do it. I thought, like, Rose was going to submit her. Honestly, I thought she was going to hurt her and then, like, jump on her back and choke her. So super impressed. The second part of your question, sir, Justin Gaethje versus Poirier rematch. I'm down for it. But honestly, I think the fight between Oliveira and Poirier is going to determine what happens, obviously, in terms of Justin Gaethje and the rest of the division. Brown Guys MMA, considering Alex's age, should the UFC give him an immediate push to make a fight between him and Adesanya, or should it wait? I'm not aware of what Pereira's age is. I'm going to guess he's like in his mid-30s. Alex Pereira, because of his experience. Let's see. He's 34. So he's not he's not crazy old, but he's definitely, I would say he's towards the tail end of his athletic prime. So, I mean, that's a good question. Honestly, I think they should test him against one more, like, respected grappler. Like, Michailidis is a good grappler, but nobody knows who the fuck he is. If they give him a grappler with a bit of a name, it doesn't have to be like a huge star or anything, and he wins, then we're talking contender, Then we're talking like maybe one other big name and then put him in there with Adesanya. But we really need to see that other aspect of his game and if it holds up against the elite fighters of the division. Guys, I apologize. Even though I have blinds, the sun is like beaming directly in through the blinds. So there's a little bit of a glare, so I apologize. Oh, let's see what we got going on past there. Yusuf asks thoughts on Wei Li and what improvements she needs to make to win the belt in the future. In terms of what she has to do in the future to come back, just put together those wins, man. She's in a similar situation that Colby's in, just like she was going into this fight. Maybe didn't necessarily deserve the rematch, but made the best of it and still lost. So she's in that same kind of situation. She's just got to put the wins together. I don't think a move up in weight or move down or whatever the case may be. I don't think that's in the cards, really. I think she just needs to do her thing, just win fights and keep going and see where it takes her, because as the broadcast team was alluding to last night, other than Carla Esparza, there's not a whole lot of contenders lined up that really deserve to fight Rose. So yeah, Weili just needs to get back on the horse and keep going. Lucas Acevedo, welcome, sir. How are you doing? Do you think the uppercut counter to a takedown is underrated? Always see people talking about the knee counter, but sometimes the uppercut seems better to me. I agree. And I mean, you do see it. That's what we saw with Derek Lewis and Curtis Blades. But in terms of like pure striking, from what I understand, because I'm not a pure striker, never was, never will be. But when the uppercut is taught traditionally, you're taught not to lead with it. You're taught not to throw it as the first punch in the combination because it leaves you very open for counters. Whereas if you lead with the knee, you can still keep yourself pretty much safe. You can still keep your high guard, and block the counter if one comes. But the other counter to a knee is the takedown. It's weird because the knee is the counter to the takedown, but it could also be vice versa. So I think the knee is a slightly safer option because you can kind of just protect your face, telegraph it less, and that's what helps people get away with the knee more than the takedown. But cool question. Brown Guys MMA, what's next for Chandler? Dariush is a good name for him, but the damage probably will keep him out. So yeah, guys, let's talk about the Chandler versus Gaethje fight. I haven't really gotten the chance to recap it yet. I'm going to do so right now, and then I'm going to answer your question. So I was watching this fight at work, as I usually do, because I'm just beholden to work Saturdays for the rest of my life, unless I hit the lottery or something, and I don't play the lottery. So good luck with that. But I'm watching it at work, and I'm trying not to lose my shit and like go crazy and start screaming, because obviously that would kind of not look so good for me to be watching fights and going crazy while at work. But what a fight, man. Definitely in contention for fight of the year. I don't even know how to score the rounds. Both dudes hurt each other really badly. And I was so surprised that both of their chins held up. I think that was the biggest surprise of the entire fight, is that both men were still standing by the end of it. I don't know how it's possible for the human body to take that much damage. I really don't. Especially when you look at their history and you look at the damage that they've taken already in their careers. Justin Gaethje's definitely been knocked out before. I think Eddie Alvarez knocked him out before. Dustin Poirier knocked him out before. And he gets rocked in every fucking fight, let's be honest. Chandler, same thing. Had two crazy wars with Eddie Alvarez in Bellator. Just coming off a knockout loss to Charles Oliveira, of all people. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. One of his last fights in Bellator, he got knocked out by Pitbull. And then another fight that I talked about on the podcast the other day was his fight against Brent Primus, where the dude chopped his leg off with leg kicks. And he not only took Justin Gaethje's punches, which is super impressive, but he took Justin Gaethje's leg kicks. He took a lot of leg kicks, and he still was like, he was getting chopped down, but he was still standing, man. I was blown away. I was absolutely floored that those guys could get through that and still continue fighting. From what I understand, they both went to the hospital after. I think if Michael Chandler, like he did mix in some wrestling, which was smart, but I think that should have been his main strategy, is to get the takedown somehow, where really he was kind of just like sprinkling it in there to just keep Justin Gaethje guessing. He did get a really good slam at one point, and Justin Gaethje showed off easily the best part of his grappling, which is his takedown defense. Wild. If Chandler would have done a little bit less showboating in that third round, and maybe he was doing it to buy himself time. Maybe he was hurt and he was kind of showboating just to, like, I don't know, recover during that time. But if he had attacked more in the third round, he could have won that fight. But yeah. What's crazy to me is that Oliveira, of all people, was the last person to knock out Michael Chandler, and then he goes in there and he eats all of Justin Gaethje's shots. And MMA math doesn't make sense, but I don't think that Oliveira's a stronger power puncher than Gaethje. That's for damn sure. So I don't know how the hell that works itself out. What's next for those guys? I don't know. We kind of talked about Justin Gaethje a little bit. As far as Chandler goes, he's 1-2 in the UFC. They're not going to cut him because he's such an exciting fighter. And, those were all against murderers. Maybe they throw him a bone. Maybe they give him somebody a little bit easier in the division if he wants it, if he'll even take it. I don't know. He might be too proud to do that. But, yeah, we'll see what's up with those guys. I've got 15 people watching, only 4 likes. What the fuck, guys? Help me out. All right, let's get to the next questions here. Jan Popovich, opinion on Ian Gary. Personally, I don't like his defense, but he's only 23. Well, something that they talked about on the broadcast last night, Daniel Cormier mentioned it, and it was a good read. I didn't pick it up at all, is that the guy he was fighting, forgive me, I forget his name, he did a great job. He landed a lot of good strikes on Ian Gary. But his timing, his rhythm was a little weird. It was giving Ian Gary a hard time because he would throw a combination. He would even overextend on that combination a little bit. And then towards the end of that combination, there'd be a quick rest, and then he would finish he would extend the combination, is what they were saying, with one other punch. And that was the punch that would always catch Ian Gary. It was when Gary was coming back in to counter, because he does a great job of fading back out of the way of the initial shots. He's got good distance management, but he didn't expect that follow-up shot that the other dude was throwing. So yeah, his defense is based on movement. His defense is based on distance, footwork, and his head movement, which he does a pretty good job of. The other dude just had his number for those first couple minutes because he was using some funky timing and some funky rhythm. So I don't think his defense is like bad. I don't think it's like something that he has to like focus on or he's going to lose every single fight. But yeah, just kind of polish it up, tighten it up a little bit. And yeah, I think he'll put together some more wins for sure. Francesco Genovese, personal question. How do you feel after a fight or after a hard sparring or rolling session? Fucking exhausted? You mean mentally or physically? Physically, I get a lot of tightness in my neck and in my hips. I've never had hip problems before, but like, I don't know, man. My hips are just feeling real tight lately. I gotta like stretch them out constantly. And my neck is tight because I've always had neck problems. Mentally, though, it feels great. This is something that I tell a lot of people that I work with, that I'm always trying to get them to train in some kind of martial arts. I'm like, dude, just come to the gym with me. I'll show you some moves for free, whatever. Like, just come train with me, and they never want to do it. And so many people that I look at, and I kind of observe how they live their life. There's so much tension, especially like with male co-workers. There's like a lot of posturing, a lot of aggression between even like buddies. Like there's a lot of aggression, not necessarily like a bad aggression, but just like a friendly competition, I guess. But they don't have any way to express it. They don't know how to express it in a healthy way. Some people do. Some people do it with video games. Some people do it with other stuff. But in my opinion, the best way to kind of get that shit out of your system, that like competitiveness, that edginess, that desire to kind of want to one up the people around you is through martial arts. And that's why after a couple days of not training, man, I feel really, really wound up. I feel really wound up. Like I gotta just get rid of all my stress. And then when I get in there and I train and I roll and I box and I do all these things, it makes me feel so much better. Like on the way to the gym, if somebody cuts me off, like while I'm driving, I get real pissed off. You know, I start cursing and stuff in the car, get a little bit of road rage. After, dude, you could fucking almost kill me in like a car accident, and I'll be like, whatever. Maybe he's having a bad day. You know, like you just feel that you don't feel the desire to really want to be aggressive anymore. That's what I get from training mentally. And I think that's important for a lot of people. I think other people need to experience that, and they'll feel less like kind of stressed out and wound up throughout the day. Guys, before I get to the next questions, I'm going to do a little bit of recapping of the rest of the card that I haven't gotten to yet. First of all, Frankie Edgar versus Marlon Vera. I don't know what the beef was between those two guys. I really like both fighters, and I don't know. It seemed like Marlon Vera was kind of being a douche to him the whole fight. So I don't know what was going on there. But Frankie Edgar, man, I love Frankie Edgar. He's been fighting forever. I think he's been fighting since UFC 67, I think is what they said, which is insane that he's seen 200 fucking UFCs go by and he's been fighting through all of them, you know. But Marlon Vera, you know, he didn't perform poorly, but Frankie Edgar was getting the better of him. You know, he was getting the takedowns. He always has fantastic footwork, and he was finding ways to outstrike Marlon Vera. I don't understand how those guys were in the same weight class. Marlon Vera looked enormous compared to Frankie Edgar. And which is crazier because Frankie Edgar used to fight at lightweight, which is just unbelievable. And now he fights at bantamweight, which I think is the perfect weight class for him. Maybe he can make 125, but still, like, he would have to really cut, and I don't think he wants to do that anymore. But 135 is a really good home for him, and Marlon Vera looked like he was 2 weight classes bigger. Marlon Vera looked like a lightweight. And the power translated into that. That's where the size advantage really manifested. There was that power, and that was it was a brutal front kick. It was perfectly timed, perfectly executed, and Frankie didn't see it coming. And he put him out with it. Crazy fight. I felt really bad for Frankie, but that was a great win for Marlon Vera. So I'm really interested to see what happens with both of those guys next. Bantamweight is a crazy division right now, guys. Fucking insane. I wouldn't be surprised to see Marlon Vera fight for a title someday, you know. What else did I not go over yet? The Shane Burgos-Quarantillo fight. I was doing something at work while that fight was on, so I was like kind of listening to it as I was working, and I was watching like the in between the rounds highlights when I could, but I really didn't watch like the whole thing. That was the only fight on the main card that I couldn't really watch. But I know that it was a good fight. I know Quarantillo put up a good fight, and Shane Burgos got the decision. Good for Shane Burgos because he was on a bit of a losing streak there. And that was a really, really important... Jesus Christ, the glare is terrible. I apologize. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, Quarantillo. That was a really important fight for him in terms of, like, getting the experience against high-level contenders, you know, because Shane Burgos has been in there with some really tough dudes. So that was important for Quarantillo, and it really lets him know where he's at in the pecking order. He did a fantastic job, even in defeat. And then, of course, the last fight that we need to talk about is Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington. And as I'm watching the first couple rounds, the first 2 rounds in particular, where Colby was getting lit up and then he got hurt really bad in the second round. And Colby, you could tell, approached this fight with a completely different mindset, completely different strategy. He was getting fucked up in those first 2 rounds. And a big part of that was because I think he just wasn't putting the combinations together because he was scared. You know, you get your fucking face broken by this crazy strong athlete, and it's going to make you second guess committing to those strikes. And that's exactly what was happening. Instead of laying on the volume, instead of putting together the combinations, he was going for these crazy haymakers. He was like leaping in for these crazy sloppy overhands. And he was getting countered, and he was just getting outstruck, where he's supposed to be the volume striker, you know? And then in the third round, after he had gotten hurt in the second round, you know, he finally started to let it go. And he was still getting clipped here and there, but I definitely scored rounds 3 and rounds 4 for Colby. The fifth round was a little weird. I don't know who to score it for. It was a little broken up too because of the eye poke that happened. And it was hard to tell who won that fifth round. But let's just say hypothetically, even if we gave the fifth round to Colby, there was still round 2, which was definitely a 10-8 round for Kamaru. In which case it would have ended up as a draw, and Kamaru still retains anyway. So I don't think I could watch that fight a million times. There's no way I could justify giving that fight to Colby. And I don't think anybody's really arguing that either. But it was a good fight. It was competitive. It was way more competitive than I thought it was going to be. I thought the whole fight was basically going to be rounds 1 and 2, where Colby was going to be afraid to engage because the knockout was still fresh on his mind, and Kamaru was going to knock him out early. And I really thought it was going to be over in that second round. He was kind of saved by the bell, let's be honest. But yeah, good win for Kamaru. Very good win for Kamaru. I'm glad that they kind of kissed and made up at the end. And we kind of saw the facade get dropped by Colby just a little bit. It was good to see. And like we spoke about before, Colby should probably fight. He could fight anybody. But the only 2 people he's fought in the past few years have been Kamaru and Tyron Woodley. And Tyron Woodley was washed up when Colby fought him. And so was, what the fuck's his name? Robbie Lawler. Lawler was past his prime when he fought him as well. So I want to see where Colby stands against these other contenders. You know, I'm sure he doesn't want to be forever number 1 contender and never win the title. But that's pretty much where he is in my mind. But I need some kind of validation for that. I need some kind of confirmation, because the fact is he really, other than Kamaru, he hasn't really fought a guy at his level, you know? So I want to see where he stands amongst the other contenders. Are there any other contenders more worthy than him? That's what I want to know. And Kamaru, in terms of who should he fight next, I don't know. It really depends on how quickly Chimaev can work his way up through the ranks. The guy likes to fight often, and his fights are fucking short, and he doesn't take any damage. So if Chimaev can string together 3-4 wins before the summertime, I could see him fighting for the title by the end of next year. You know, definitely, maybe even earlier. Who knows? Yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts on the card as a whole. I'm gonna get through these questions and then kind of read your responses towards the end there. I also wanted to get your thoughts on the Bellator 270 main card, if any of you watched it. That was a really bad loss for James Gallagher. I kind of feel bad for him. And because he lost doing what he's known for, which is grappling. You know, he got submitted. Now he has 2 finish losses on his record, knockout and one to a guillotine, I think it was. And he did a good job of escaping most of the guillotines initially, but then he finally did get caught. He kept shooting in for that takedown. Just sloppy, man, sloppy. And the fight between Patricky Pitbull and Peter Queally, fantastic. But Patricky definitely had that power advantage, man. And honestly, Patricky was winning their first fight too until he took that bad cut. So I really didn't think Peter Queally was the better fighter going into that, but I wasn't going to put him past it to find a way to win, you know. But yeah, Patricky's the new lightweight king in Bellator. Impressive stuff. All right, let me see if I can find where the fuck I was at here. I think the next question was from Mr. Popovich over here. Do you think the UFC should add an atomweight division for the female divisions, seeing how much better strawweight is? Strawweight is the most stacked women's division, in my opinion. Featherweight is barren. Yes, you are correct. Featherweight shouldn't even exist at this point. I wouldn't be surprised to see them get rid of it if Amanda Nunes were to retire or something like that. This fucking glare is driving me nuts. Atomweight, yeah, I don't know how many chicks there are that size. You know, I know if you watch ONE FC, it's actually one of their deeper divisions. But when you look at ONE FC, all their lighter weight classes are very deep. Even like men's flyweight. I think they have a men's strawweight over there in ONE FC, which is just fucking insane. I don't know how deep it is, but like I'm not buying into any stereotypes or anything, but maybe people are just smaller over there. I don't know. I honestly don't understand why they have so many small people compared to other divisions. Because if you look at ONE FC's upper weight classes, like heavyweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, not in that order, they're pretty barren. They barely have anybody. That's why they have so many champs over there. That's why Ong Long Sang was the champ for so long, because he had like 2 dudes in both of his divisions, you know, and he just beat the shit out of them for a couple of years. So I don't know if it would really work for the UFC. I don't know if there's enough talent, even for female MMA, in terms of atom weights. You know, maybe I'll go on Invicta's site and check to see how many atom weights they have. I'm pretty sure they have an atom weight division. That could kind of change my mind on what I think. But yeah, I don't know if it would work for the UFC. Lucas Acevedo says, what do you think about Gary Tonin in MMA? Could he be champion in an American promotion like PFL, Bellator, or the UFC? Yes, maybe not yet in terms of the promotions. But yeah, man, I love Gary Tonin. I love his style. I think he is like one of the best representations of jiu-jitsu in the entire sport right now. He's got that modern style, he's got the leg locks, and he's got everything else that comes along with jiu-jitsu. And he's going to be fighting for the title soon in ONE FC, I think towards the end of this year. Maybe because they don't fucking like announce the actual cards. They tell you when the cards are going to be on ONE FC's website, but they don't tell you who's fighting until like a day before. I don't know how the fuck they promote these fights when they don't even tell you who's fighting until like a couple days before. Whatever. I'm pretty sure Gary Tonin is going to be on one of those cards, and he's fighting a striker. I think he's fighting Tan Lee is his name. Used to fight in the, I think he had a couple fights in the UFC, or maybe it was just like the Ultimate Fighter or something. But he's been fighting in ONE FC for a while, and he just beat Martin Nguyen in ONE FC, so that's really impressive. Martin Nguyen's a very good fighter. Former champ in ONE FC. of the lighter weight classes, not the bigger weight classes, the lighter weight classes. So that's saying something. And Ton Lee knocked him out. So Gary Tonin, we're going to see how Gary Tonin performs against a very big, like a much bigger name. All the guys that Gary Tonin has fought so far were good. They were, they weren't scrubs. They knew how to grapple. But they were nobodies in terms of their brand and so forth. So Ton Lee's a dangerous fighter that he's going to have to get through, and I think he can submit him. And if you become ONE FC champion, that's really impressive. Put all the other organizations aside, ONE FC champ is still impressive. And Gary Tonin's knocking on the door of that. I think he could definitely win a season of the PFL. I think he's definitely up there in Bellator as well. Maybe needs to get a few more fights under his belt before we could be talking about Bellator champ. As of right now, in terms of UFC talent, he would probably be contender if you threw him in there right now, probably in the top 15. But definitely needs to put some wins together against higher ranked and bigger named guys before I would jump on that bandwagon of saying he could be the next UFC champ or something like that. Good question, though. And then in another question from Lucas, Jack Hermanson would be a good test to Alex Pota? Did you mean Pereira? Because yes, if that is your question, I believe Jack Hermanson would be a good test for Pereira. Let's see. What do we got here? Weili versus Valentina. How does that play out? Well, that would be one of the few fights where Valentina is the bigger woman. Valentina probably could make strawweight if she really tried. But I don't think she wants to. I think she is aware of what that would do to her. Maybe she's made the cut before, but she seems pretty adamant to not want to cut that much weight. We know it's possible. It's definitely possible she can make it because Joanna made the weight. And Joanna is pretty much the same size as Valentina. So, yeah, I don't know. That would be a really good kickboxing fight. Guys, I'm doing Valentina Shevchenko. How good is her striking? I'm working on that right now, in fact. I should have that done maybe in a week and a half at the most. And then I'll be working on Charles Oliveira's striking after that to have that ready before his next fight against Poirier. So those are the two that I'm working on right now. Keep that in the back of your minds. All right. Try to get through these questions quickly here. I've got another 10 or 15 minutes to talk to you guys here. Yusuf. Does Mackenzie Dern or Marina beat Weili? Is that a different weight class or is that the same weight class? Yeah, you might be right. That might be the same weight class. The Dern fight would be interesting because Dern is game. She will strike with you. She eventually wants to get it to the ground, but she's not afraid to strike. She has the jiu-jitsu to beat anybody, but especially Weili. Like Weili's guys, I know Weili has not been submitted before, but that doesn't tell you the full story. Weili's submission defense is sketchy. Okay, and so against Dern, that could be a bad matchup stylistically. I'm not saying that Dern is necessarily the better fighter, but she might have the right combination of skills to beat Weili. And Marina would be a good stand-up battle. I would love to see that. I can't really say who wins, but I would lean towards Weili. But yeah, that's a good battle. Another question from Yusuf. Chandler is a better wrestler than Oliveira. and couldn't get the takedown. Does Justin KO Oliveira? Oh, MMA math, how it deceives us. I mean, that makes sense on paper, but and Oliveira's chin ain't the best either. You know, honestly, I'm surprised that Oliveira beat Chandler. I really am. I'm surprised that Oliveira survived against Chandler's power and he didn't just eat dirt after taking a punch from Chandler. He almost did. He almost did. I don't know if Oliveira could take Justin down. Maybe if he tired him out a little bit. But he doesn't need to. Oliveira can get you to the fence, or he can get you to go to your knees, and then he takes your back from there. That's what I was worried about in his fight against Khabib when Justin fought him, because Justin is very good at with his takedown defense, but one of the primary avenues he takes for his takedown defense is if his base becomes compromised, he will go belly down on all fours in order to work his way back up. Classic wrestling. But against a guy who has strangles such as Khabib and uses that strategy to his advantage constantly, where he gets you in a compromised position, forces you on all fours, and then takes your back from there. Justin is vulnerable to that. He's very vulnerable to that style. And although Oliveira isn't as good at that route as Khabib is, it is a route that he takes sometimes, where he gets you to the fence, he gets you to turn away from you, and then he jumps on your back from there. And we all know what Oliveira can do once he's on someone's back. Not only that, but Oliveira can pull guard. I wouldn't recommend it against Justin, but Oliveira is confident in his jiu-jitsu. It would not surprise me to see him pull guard against Justin Gaethje if those two fought. But the other thing that you have to watch out with Gaethje are the slams. Not necessarily... that is not my recommended type of defense against jiu-jitsu either, but it's still something to be cognizant of, because if you are not, you're going to get slammed on your head. Remy Havoc, welcome, my friend. I don't know if this was asked already, but will you make a video about martial arts combinations that translate well with street fights? Like that video I found about tactics best done inside or outside the cage. Here's the thing about talking about street fights. Street fights are really just like mutual agreements to fight each other illegally. And I'm not about that. And in terms of self-defense, where someone is assaulting you and you need to find out a way to survive, I'm not an expert in that. Or I will never claim to be. I would probably fare better than most in that type of situation because I have martial arts training, but I would not want to pretend like I knew a lot about that. So I'm sure that I could kind of fumble through a video like that, but I wouldn't want to give out any false information or pretend like I am something that I'm not. So that's why I haven't made a video about that yet. Another question from Remy. The video was... Hold on. I think this is in response to something else. So many BJJ tactics can get you mauled in a fight with no rules. I mean, that can be said about any martial arts. And you're right. There's many aspects of jiu-jitsu where if you were to do it in a street fight or even a self-defense situation, or let's just say a no-hold-barred competition, if they even do those anymore, yeah, you would get fucking smacked. If you pull X guard in a street fight, you're probably going to get smashed in the face. Probably. Although there is an argument to be made that if you do it correctly, X guard could be used in a context where there are strikes, but maybe I'll make a video about that later. But you could still say that about any martial art. If you took boxers or even Muay Thai guys, Muay Thai is one of the most complete striking arts you could possibly learn. And if you threw him in there in a no-holds-barred fight where the rules were whatever, if he didn't know how to grapple on the ground, he's going to get strangled. This was the point of UFC. It's like we already saw this. We already saw this. Royce Gracie was a pure jiu-jitsu fighter. Nothing else. He did not know how to strike. For as much as he liked to pretend he did, he had no fucking idea what he was doing on the feet. That little stomp kick that he did, that was all he had. Of course, once it hit the ground, he had some ground and pound, but those were no rules fights, and we saw what ended up happening. The only difference between that and a street fight or a self-defense fight or whatever kind of fight with no rules was that there was no eye gouging and no biting, because those were part of the rules in the original UFCs. So this is something that we've already seen. So you are correct, but the same can be said for all martial arts, really. Arjun Poor, if Dustin gets the belt in December, I hope Justin gets the title shot ahead of Islam. If Charles remains the champ, I want Islam to fight for the title next. Just a matter of styles. And that's a fantastic little roadmap that you've made. I agree. Maybe not with Justin getting the next title shot over Islam. Because I still think that Dustin and Islam could have a good fight. I really do. And honestly, I think Dustin wins that fight. It would be nice to see Justin get a title defense if he wins the belt. It would be nice to see Charles get a title defense. I really like the Charles versus Islam fight. I really, really like it. I want to see how that plays out. I'm going to try to answer a few more questions here, guys. Nice to be back, Arjun. Thank you, sir. So Lucas Acevedo says, Edgar made me think about the weight cut. Guys are way bigger now in MMA. I'm 186 centimeters tall, and I felt better to me cutting to 135. This is crazy to me when I think of guys like Frankie Edgar. Yeah, man, he's always been the smaller guy. I didn't expect for there to be that big of a size difference between him and Marlon Vera, though. I really didn't. He also says the UFC card was amazing after the Vallante fight. The Bellator card was okay. I'm just happy to have another Brazilian champ. I hope Bellator makes an event in Brazil now. Yeah. And Bellator would be smart to have more international fights. They've kind of really established themselves in Europe, like I spoke about earlier. And obviously they're established in the United States. Now they have to start to branch out more if they really want to compete with the UFC brand. Oh, cool. I'm actually getting through these questions. Ninja Dud, is Khamzat ready to face the top guys in the division? Kind of already answered that. I don't know yet. I do want to see him fight some bigger name dudes. And considering how quickly his fights have been ending, just line them up, man. Line them up. If he can get in 3 or 4 fights before the summertime or the springtime, it wouldn't surprise me. And that would really give us a good idea of where he's at. Ronnie Pickering. Does anyone find a video of Dylan getting slapped backstage at UFC 268? Are we talking about Dylan Dennis? I did not hear of this, but now I'm probably going to look it up after I get off a live stream. Lucas Acevedo says, what do you think about the Ryzen promotion? Um, if they clearly don't take themselves too seriously with some of the fights that they put on, but there are some really talented guys from there that fight in the UFC now, and they still have some talented guys over there. Their biggest name is definitely Horiguchi, and the one Brazilian Japanese guy, I think he's mixed Japanese Brazilian. What's his name? I think he's a lightweight. But those are the two biggest guys over there right now, definitely. But Yuri Prochazka came from there. Manel Kape came from there. There's talent there for sure. But I don't take them too seriously because they have all those silly fights. I'm Rick asks, Bellator had a card last night. Which of the same three guys fought each other again? No, this was actually a good card because it wasn't that situation for once. It was some of their more talented younger guys fighting. Remy Havoc, thanks for the answer. I thought about that question because of my cheating in MMA list, and I thought maybe you'd know a thing or two about what to do in street fight situations. Yeah, I've never actually been in a street fight. Never, not once. But sometimes I like to kind of speculate on things that might work in and out of the cage. Kayla slapped him. Who's Kayla? And why is she slapping people? Slapping Dylan Dennis. All right, a few more questions, guys. Is Chiesa, Burns, and Colby a good path for Chimaev to get the title? Yeah. That is a really compelling argument to fight for the title. Honestly, though, with a guy like Chimaev, they might not do that. Because of Usman kind of needing more contenders to bully, they might expedite him through the process a little bit. I like I've been saying this whole podcast, I want Chimaev to fight often and as many contenders as possible, maybe even in multiple divisions. But because of who he is, because of what he does to people, they might just throw him in there with a guy that has a respectable name, but they know he can beat, like Chiesa, and then move him right to the title from there. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. But yeah. After watching the Colby Kamaru 2 fight, how do you see Burns versus Covington going? You know, I think Burns has the power to knock Colby down. And if he can knock Colby down, I think he can submit Colby. I think Burns is, even though Colby's a fantastic wrestler, I don't think he knows what to do if he gets put on his back or if he has his back taken, especially by a guy like Burns. So I see Burns winning that fight, honestly. Francesco calling for Chimaev versus Luque. Dude, pick a name. Pick a name out of the hat, and I'm down for it. As long as they're like a higher ranked contender. The Chimaev-Nate Diaz fight doesn't make any sense to me, but any other name, I'm down. Dylan Dennis got slapped by Ali Abdelaziz. Don't know why. Probably both of them being themselves. Yep, that sounds about right. That sounds about right, my friend. Guys, thank you so much for coming to this little live chat of mine that I did on short notice, as I do most of them. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'm going to be working on Valentina Shevchenko striking, Charles Oliveira striking, and a lot more before the end of the year. Whatever I can squeeze in, I'm going to do that. And make sure to check out Rev Gear. You can get 10% off with my discount code. And check out the Patreon channel memberships. Everything you guys do on that stuff helps the channel grow, helps me make more videos, and I really appreciate it. So, guys, I love you all. Have a good rest of your weekends. I got to go to work now, and thank you. Peace.